Could we wait just a couple of minutes, maybe two past, to let everybody get in, and thank you for the reminder about recording.
Of course, yeah, we'll give everyone a couple minutes. Thank you, Bryn, for tuning in for McMinnville. That's exciting. Oh, Brooklyn, even further.
Wow, you see we have Jinder joining from Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Marge. Oh, I love that our event made it to other states. That's amazing.
Yes. Well, folks, everybody, welcome. Really appreciate you being here with us. We kick off this webinar series, which will be happening same time, same place each night this week. And starting us off tonight is Christy Irvin of Seeds for the Soul. You've got it, Christy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time this evening to hang out with us and learn a little bit about ways to reduce your carbon emissions and help out the people in your communities. I'm going to start off with some introductions, share a little bit about myself. I am Oregon born and raised. I was born in McMinnville, just up north near Portland. I am recently an Arizona State University graduate, just a couple more weeks here. It's right ahead of me. I have been very dedicated to climate work since I was in high school. One of our presenters later this week, Julie Williams, was my sustainability teacher back in high school. And she really just sparked that interest in me at a young age. Since 2019, I've been volunteering with the Sustainability Coalition, primarily the Energy Action Team. But I have been on some meetings in our other action teams in the community. Tomorrow we will have Dan Orzik of Oregon Clean Power Co-op presenting, talking about his larger community solar projects and commercial installations that he's done. Also a native Oregonian. Dan co-founded Oregon Clean Power Co-op back in 2015 and is now serving as their general manager. He's done more than 30 projects and continues to set up more. Feels like every month he's on to his next big project. On Wednesday, we will have Julie Williams of Seeds for the Soul, a retired teacher of 33 years. And locally, we call her our green goddess. She's very dedicated to the work. Just every part of her life, she's in it. Currently, she's working for the nonprofit organization that she started 10 years ago, Seeds for the Soul. You'll hear more about our program, as well as residential energy efficiency, primarily solar. And Thursday, we will have Brian Lee of the Corvallis Carbon Offset Fund. He will speak a little bit about how the offset fund was started in our area, as well as what it looks like to replicate this sort of fund in other areas. And Friday, Julie Williams will be doing our closing event that night, and Michael Hughes, who just introduced me a moment ago, he will also be speaking that evening on Friday. I also want to say thank you to all of our volunteers. We had a whole group of people working on this. working on our marketing, getting posters out there, sharing to their congregations. So though you're only seeing a few faces, there were a lot of us working on this. Hopefully we can make it even bigger next year. That would be fantastic. So again, just a little bit of our agenda. We know everybody's really busy, so we want you to know what we're up to this week, so you can tune into the nights you're most interested in. So today in my introduction, I want to talk a little more directly about climate concerns, and why are we here? Why are we spending our evenings tuning into this webinar to learn about climate change? It's a topic that's talked about often. It's in the news nearly every day. It's not new, so there are obviously reasons we're still talking about it. The climate concerns that were brought to our attention decades ago are genuinely starting to affect our daily lives. We're seeing harsher seasons, abnormal weather, higher temperatures, but also when people hear global warming, they don't think of colder temperatures. I know over here in Oregon, I saw more snow in the Willamette Valley and a much colder winter than we're used to. Globally, we're also seeing poor air quality, increasing severity in natural disasters. Like I think of Italy, I know a lot of Italy is flooding, or islands that are losing parts of their land due to flooding and rising sea levels. So it's time to acknowledge that we can't sit by and wait for someone else to solve the problem. Change will not happen quickly enough if we don't all contribute. So the bad news is there was an article released by The Guardian that shared scientists have delivered a final warning on climate crisis. It is that we act now or it's too late. Only rapid and drastic reductions in greenhouse gases in this decade, in the next 7 to 10 years, can prevent our climate from continuing to break down. It's been said by many that 7 to 10 year window is a very common estimate. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, we've already gone beyond our tipping point and done the damage, but we can make a difference for our future. So, like I said, there is good news. There is something you can do about it. I feel that as a young person, I'm only 26, that facing the reality of climate change and its impact on my life is really overwhelming, especially working in the energy industry. I hear a lot of news and get a lot of knowledge about our climate reality that's really intense, and it can feel really daunting, but I want to be part of the change that I want to see in the world. I want to have, a healthy life with fresh air and clean drinking water, sustainable food sources, safe shelter. So I need to do what I can from my position to make that happen. So we're going to look at a couple ways to help combat the effects of climate change. The first one we're looking at here is reducing methane emissions. Methane is a greenhouse gas about 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide, but it only lasts about 10 to 20 years. According to the EPA, the largest sources of methane emissions are from human activities. In the US, the largest are oil and gas systems, livestock, and landfills. So methane is concerning because it traps in the heat from the sun and continues to lead to the warming of our Earth. According to the Environmental Defense Fund, methane emissions are currently responsible for about 25% of all human-made global warming that we're experiencing.
Well, it's 10 after 7. I asked.
Yeah.
Looks like we got a mic on
I
somewhere.
asked you this like half an hour ago and nobody wanted to go. That's fine. That's fine.
Oops. I got muted somehow. Is my sound working now? Looks like it. So looking at a global scale, it can be really intimidating and feel like you don't have much of a chance of making a difference, but you can. A good first step is switching your home to all electric. Burning natural gas releases less carbon dioxide into the air than other fossil fuels, such as coal or oil, but there's still an enormous risk associated with methane leaks that are still impacting climate change. Another thing, or another way to reduce your impact that a lot of people don't think of, that sorting your trash reduces your impact on landfills. So we're always taught to recycle, but it really does make a difference. Composting as much as you can, if your space allows for it, recycling. And my third example here, eating less meat. And if you do want to have meat, because sometimes you just can't go without that protein source, choosing local sources makes a difference, because when you are having beef, for example, it's not just the resources that it takes to, care for that cow through its life. It's the energy and resources that go into packing it, to transporting it, to storing it, all the energy use in massive grocery stores or refrigerated trucks. There's a lot more to that road than just growing the cow itself. Our next example here, these pictures might look familiar. I know I see spots like this along Highway 20 as I'm heading over to the coast. We need to, I know Oregon is a big logging state, but we need to slow our deforestation and be mindful of the amount of trees we're cutting down, because the biggest thing here is trees help clean our air and create our air so that we can breathe and live. And an estimated 60% of emerging infectious diseases come from animals, and a major cause of the viruses jumping from that wildlife to humans is habitat loss. If we are to cut down their habitat, they have nowhere to go. They're going to head into town, and there's a lot of opportunity for the viruses to make its way into populations. Oregon also has an abundance of fresh water and really rich soil that we must protect. We are in a really great position for things like rich soil and great land to farm. There are many states and places across the world that are too dry or just unfit for growing food. Also thinking recreationally, if you enjoy camping, hiking, backpacking, all of it's going to be affected if we don't have forests to go in and do those activities. I personally am a really avid hiker. The first time I went down to Umpqua National Forest after Oregon experienced some really severe wildfires in 2021 and 22. I pulled around this bend. I just remember it so vividly. I pull around this bend and I just had to pull over because I was overcome with emotions, and I just cried because you can hear the news, you can read the numbers, you can read the articles, but we're sort of desensitized to it. And so actually seeing this burnt land that was once a lush green area that I enjoyed being in, to just see it knocked down. It was just black and gray, and I just couldn't help but cry. So all that to say that it's hard to read all of this information and not feel it. But it's our reality, and it's something to look at. So I also want to talk about forests in terms of a feedback loop. Forests sequester carbon by capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and transforming it into biomass, into trees, into more of themselves. And when we're cutting trees down, we're releasing carbon from the forest ecosystems. And it is, adding more CO2 to our atmosphere and causing more or, higher increase in temperatures, adding to all the things we're trying to avoid. Next, we'll talk about food waste. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I go to, a restaurant and I see people have left quite a bit of food left on their table, or I wonder about all of the leftovers back in the kitchen that don't get used, or I'm at the grocery store and you think of all that produce that might expire and not get sold. It's actually not as much waste as households produce. As of, I think these numbers were from 2021, but in the US, households waste more than grocery stores and restaurants combined, which I think is crazy. I didn't think it was that high. And about 6 to 8% of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions could be reduced if we stopped wasting food. 6 to 8% is pretty high when you think about just the scale that they're looking at. In the US alone, the production of lost or wasted food also generates the equivalent of 32.6 million cars worth of greenhouse gas emissions per year, which is also an insane number to try to think about. So again, like I was mentioning with beef earlier, when we're wasting food, we're also wasting all of the energy and resources that went into growing it, harvesting it, transporting it, packaging it, just much more waste than tossing that expired food in the trash. This is also something you can be doing from home. Consider your food choices. Reducing your meat intake is a pretty significant one. Buying local the best that you can, or growing your own food. Another good way to reduce your food waste is to shop more frequently. If you're to plan a couple meals, a couple days at a time, and buy your produce as you need it, rather than getting those perishable items, Monday, and just hoping that in 6 or 7 days when you're ready to make that wonderful dinner that it's still good. Also consider your food storage. A lot of packaging for foods don't help them last very long. So consider reusable Ziploc bags. Those are a great choice. Glass Tupperware, anything reusable and things that can seal well so your food will last longer. Next, utilize renewable energy. In 2021, Oregon passed the Clean Energy Targets Bill, which is requiring that certain electricity providers serving Oregon reduce their greenhouse gas emissions associated with the electricity they provide. So I know that Oregon is taking a pretty big step, and I'm hopeful that other states follow because it's important that we're making these larger changes right now. Also in Oregon, we utilize a lot of hydropower and wind power. Oregon is actually the second highest hydropower producing state in the nation. and Washington just barely above us. According to the Oregon Department of Energy, Oregon has nearly 100 hydropower generation sites across the state. I was really surprised when I came across that information. That seems like a pretty high number. And we're exporting nearly a third of the amount of the energy that we use. So we have such a good space for hydropower that we can share it with neighboring states. This is something that Julie will talk about more on Wednesday, but I just wanted to give people an idea of how significant utilizing solar power can be. The amount of solar energy available each year dwarfs supplies of any other source of power, including the total reserves of all fossil fuels on Earth. So I've heard this joke a couple times, but you know, solar installers, they really love nuclear power because, you know, we got the sun right up there producing all the power we need. So thinking about renewable energy, we'll also think about energy efficiency. So some really easy steps, obviously, are LED light bulbs. I know a lot of stores really only have LED as an option, but you'd be surprised how many people haven't made that switch yet. Installing low flow water fixtures will also, it'll reduce your water consumption, but it'll also reduce your energy use, getting the water to your home or heating your water. Another great way to be more energy efficient at home is to turn your heat down. I hear that a lot in Corvallis. We're all very climate conscious. So it's not uncommon for everyone to be hanging out in the living room with a nice sweater and a blanket on their lap, just so we can keep the heat down a little bit. Another great way to be energy efficient is to install power strips, especially for big appliances. I personally have one on for my microwave. So if I'm not using my microwave, I'll go over and turn the switch off because a lot of appliances and electronics that are plugged in, they're always using a little bit of power. Granted, it can be a very small amount, but every little bit counts. Also consider insulating your home. Take a peek in your crawl space, your attic. If you're a renter, consider sealing your windows and doors the best that you can to hold in your warm or cool air, depending on the season. Also check your appliances and get them serviced regularly to ensure max efficiency, especially things like your furnace or your hot water heater. Those are significant energy uses in your home. So you don't want to just leave it in the garage and ignore it for 20 years and hope for the best. It's definitely worth looking at every so often. So I gave a lot of examples, and I know it can feel really brief, but I promise if I had the chance, I could probably talk about each of those topics all day. But I want to say that the bottom line is that we're running out of time. We must be dedicated to doing what's best for our planet, to save our future. And I know there have been so many campaigns and commercials and posters and endless content saying that, but it's the truth. It's our reality. When people are thinking about being sustainable and changing the habits in their life, I hope they're considering their families, thinking of your parents, your children, your grandchildren, nieces, nephews, anyone. If we want to be here for a long time, we need to take care of it. Again, creating a sustainable way of life is an essential part of caring for our planet. We must have compassion for all living creatures, as every creature contributes to our ecosystem and its survival. We are called to protect people and the planet, living in our faith in relationship with all of God's creation. So this is not a selfish consideration. This is for everyone in your community, for everyone in your family. The switch has to happen together. I'd like to end with this beautiful piece of art here. We are called to care for our common home. Again, we are in this together. The shift has to happen together in order for change to happen at the rate that we need it to save and protect ourselves. And yes, so again, I know that I was kind of brief. I touched a lot of topics today, but I just wanted to have time to pull everyone in to get, the wheels turning, thinking about your habits. Where could you improve? Where do you want to learn more? We will have more information about energy efficiency the next 2 days, as well as incentives and funding that are available to help with those energy efficiency projects. So thank you all so much. I'm going to open up the floor now for questions, discussion. We have quite a bit more time. So if there are any topics that we want to bring up, we have the time.
In the chat, Tim had asked when you were talking about ways to reduce carbon. Tim at that point asked about avoiding wood burning stoves.
So I would think about electrification, like I was talking about on one of my slides. If you're using wood stoves for heating, considering like an electric space heater. There have also been a lot more opportunities for heating upgrades like ductless heat pumps. Those are becoming more common, especially in Oregon. I'm unsure what the popularity is like elsewhere, but that's a great option. Anyone else have any questions, any topics you'd like to bring up?
I'm really interested in other faith communities, what they're doing as a faith community, what's coming. Is this an established part of their faith community? Is it new? Is it something they're exploring? And I would welcome folks to share their experiences in their faith communities.
Is there anyone participating that would be interested in sharing their experience?
I'll share from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here in Corvallis. In our faith tradition, one of our principles, our seventh principle, is care for the independent web of life, of which we're all part. And so this issue of environmental care is sort of baked into our denomination. And here at the UU Fellowship in Corvallis, we do have an active climate action team, and we're collaborating with the green teams from the Methodist Church here in town and the United Church of Christ here in town. And I would, if others from other towns are in collaboration or have green teams, I would invite and encourage you to share.
Hi, this is Bryn from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of McMinnville, and our congregation hasn't been in existence for a super long time, But recently, a couple years ago, we started a social and environmental justice committee. And about a year and a half ago, we started a plastic recycling event, and we're working now to expand that to education to reduce plastic itself. But we started it from St. James Recycling in Portland, a nonprofit, or James Recycling in Portland. And so basically we have created these recycling events, a few a year, and therefore recycling plastic that can't be put in curbside, and it goes to the James Recycling plant in Portland, and they turn it back into the plastic to give it another life. But it's gotten really big, and it started to expand to a couple other neighboring communities are interested, and it's been really successful. And so we're working now to try to build the education in our community around not using plastic at all versus just recycling it, because that's not really the solution. But at least we're getting, people starting to think about it and realizing how much plastic they're using. And so we've taken that first step, and it's been really successful, but we're really trying to move past that as well.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear. I know in our area, there have been a lot of changes as to what products can or can't be recycled. So it's really nice that your community is, reaching up to Portland and putting in the work to make sure that you're recycling as much as you can. Anyone else like an opportunity to share? Michael, did you see Tim's question here?
Yeah, and Tim asked if there are any faith communities seriously acting to adjust, refit their facilities with solar insulation, triple windows, etc. Dan's presentation tomorrow is, I think, going to have a focus on the work that the Clean Power Co-op has done with a group of churches in Salem on putting and installing solar. And I know our fellowship here in Corvallis, we have solar. And I'm sure other faith communities on the call have solar, and I welcome anybody whose church has solar to pipe up and tell us about it.
Michael, I also think this would be a great chance talking about refitting churches to talk about your carbon offset that the UU does.
Well, that's what I had planned to talk about on Friday.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so
We'll wait. Everybody has to come back, hang out with us Friday and learn more.
so just a tease on that, we in our fellowship, we do as set up by board policy, we have committed to try to reduce and take responsibility for our carbon emissions, and we track them and we tax ourselves, and we put the money into a fund to be used both to reduce our emissions, and for those that we can't get rid of, to take responsibility for them. Karen, you got it.
Hi, I'm Karen Bloom, and I'm the environmental care team leader at the First United Methodist Church in Corvallis. And we had talked as a church about putting on solar panels for a long, long time. And there were various reasons why that didn't happen. But I'm trying to think, it's been a couple of years. We had devised a plan, had a committee that devised a plan on putting solar panels on our community center, which is a one-story building built on the campus, the one-block campus of our church. And that plan was presented to the church council, and they accepted it. And part of the plan was to raise funds for the solar panels. And we set out to raise. There was a committee to raise funds, and within 2 weeks, we had raised all the funds for the solar panels that we had planned for on the community center, plus 2 backup
Like the battery.
battery backup. Thank you. It was going to be 1, but we had enough for 2, and we actually went over that. And I think hopefully sometime that money can be put into a community solar. So because we use more electricity at the church than our solar panels can muster for us. But we are thrilled to be solar. We had a party, and it feels like we're doing something good for the environment. The battery backup in an emergency, we're looking into how we can open up that ability to like recharge phones to the community around our church. So we're thinking in terms of being sort of a resilience hub also. And that's sort of a hazy thought on the future for us. But we are just excited about how much our congregation bought into going solar and how joyful it was for us to do that. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Any questions? I don't know if I can answer them, but
I will say, and maybe adding some hope to the idea of being a resiliency center. I'm seeing a lot of projects related to that. There are a lot more communities trying to build, their community to be more resilient during emergencies. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. Larry just shared in our chat here that First Congregational in Corvallis has had lease to buy solar panels for about 10 years and installed double pane windows. They're also looking at heat pumps in some rooms of the building. Those of you in other states, how popular or how common are solar panels in your areas? Do you see them in neighborhoods or on businesses? Are they? I know at least in Corvallis over here, they're everywhere. All right, well, I think we may wrap up a little early if no one has any more questions or anything they'd like to share or add to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Christy, and thank you all for coming. You know, I think those of us associated with faith communities, I think we can play an important part in this work that needs to be done. I'm a big fan of us in the faith community of taking a lead in this work. So I appreciate everybody participating tonight, and I look for you to come back for the presentations for the rest of the week. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you especially, Christy.
Thank you.
Folks. Do you want to stay around for a minute, Christy, afterwards? Folks are slowly dropping off.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Bryn, for joining us from another town. That's exciting. Do you still have your recording going?
Oh, let me stop that. Is that stop recording?